If you've got a mower in the shed with more hours on it than the salesman who sold it to you has years on this earth, this one's for you. I spent 35 years with grease under my fingernails. I don't fix riding mowers for a living anymore. Haven't touched a wrench for hire in years, but neighbors still stop me at the feed store and ask the same question every time. Which one should I actually buy? This isn't a spec sheet countdown written by somebody who's never pulled a transaxle apart. It's 3 machines I'd hand over my own money for, 1 machine I'll tell you flat out to leave sitting on the lot, and 2 questions that decide which one you're looking at before you ever read a brochure. Because the difference between a mower built to be fixed and one built to be replaced gets decided years before it ever shows up on a dealer's lot. Here's how I judge a mower. Same way I judged every machine that ever rolled into my shop. 2 things matter more than anything else on the hood. First, the transaxle. Whether it can actually be serviced when it wears out, or whether it's sealed shut and built to die on schedule. A serviceable unit has a drain plug worth using, filters you can swap, parts you can order, and fix yourself on a Saturday afternoon. A sealed unit has none of that. Once it's cooked, you're not fixing it, you're replacing the whole machine. Second, who actually owns the name on the hood? Because that tells you more about what's inside than any brochure ever will. A company still run by the family that built it thinks about the next 50 years. A company owned by a private equity fund thinks about the next quarterly report. Keep those 2 questions in your head, because we're running every mower on this list through both of them. There's a third thing I check, and it's the one that gets skipped completely at the dealer counter. The deck itself. Run your hand along the underside of a cheap deck, and you'll feel it flex under your palm, stamped out of thin sheet steel in a press. A fabricated deck is built different. Steel plates cut and welded together, thicker gauge, holding its shape after 5 years of hitting roots and rocks instead of oil canning every time you go over a bump. You can't always see that difference from the showroom floor. You can always feel it, and you can always ask the dealer straight out which kind you're looking at. One more thing before we get into the machines. Where you buy matters almost as much as what you buy. A big box store isn't going to have a mechanic on staff who's ever pulled a transaxle apart. A real dealer stocks parts, keeps a service bay running, and has a name to protect in your town. And no, big ownership isn't automatically the enemy here. Toro's owned Zark since 1997 and hasn't gutted it. Kubota still builds real commercial-grade equipment. This is about who's accountable for what's under the hood, not who's bigger. Let's start with the one that surprised me the first time I really dug into it. The Gravely ZTHD comes with a 52 or 60-inch deck and a Kawasaki FR engine putting out 23 or 24 horsepower, depending which one you get. And underneath it, there are Hydro Gear ZT3100 transaxles, not the cheap sealed kind. The serviceable kind, with an actual drain plug, actual filters, parts you can order and swap yourself, instead of hauling the whole machine back to a dealer. The deck's fabricated, not stamped, and Gravely builds these out of a company called Ariens, that's still run by the same family that's owned it since the 1930s. Dan Ariens runs it today. His great-grandfather started the whole thing. Nobody in a private equity office decided what goes into that deck. This is a commercial-grade zero-turn built by a company that's never once been sold to a fund manager. That's rarer than it should be in this industry, and it's exactly why the Gravely earns its spot here. You get a 4-year limited warranty on it too, and that tells you something. A company doesn't back a machine for 4 years unless they've already tested it to death and know it'll hold up. I've got a neighbor running a mower from this same family that's 20 years old and still cutting his acreage. 2 belts and 2 batteries in that whole stretch. That's the same engineering philosophy that carries into the ZTHD today. You're not buying a name that got handed off between 3 different owners in the last decade. You're buying a machine from a company where the great-grandson of the founder still signs off on what goes into it. That's the closest thing to buy it once you're going to find in this price range. It starts around $5,000, depending on your dealer and your deck size. No suspension system, no fancy touchscreen, just a serviceable transaxle, a fabricated deck, and a family that's still got skin in the game. If you're looking for the machine that proves independent ownership still means something in this industry, this is it. Now here's the one that's going to surprise some of you, and I want you to actually hear me out before you skip ahead to the comments. The Ferris ISX800. This one sits right in the middle of this list, and that's on purpose because it's the one I'd actually put my own money down for if I had to choose today. 27 horsepower, a Kawasaki or a Briggs commercial engine depending on the build. Underneath it, Hydrogear ZT3400 transaxles. The true commercial grade unit, fully serviceable, built to run for thousands of hours if you keep oil in it. The deck's fabricated steel. And this machine's got something almost nothing else on this list has, a suspension system under the operator platform that actually soaks up the bumps instead of rattling your spine loose over rough ground. Most zero turns bolt the seat straight to the frame, so every root and gopher hole goes straight up your back. Ferris built independent suspension into the front end, so the wheels move over the bump instead of the whole platform jumping with it. Run one for 8 hours on rough ground, and you'll feel the difference in your lower back that night. Here's the part that's going to make some of you uncomfortable, and I'm not going to hide it from you. Ferris is owned by Briggs & Stratton. Briggs & Stratton went bankrupt in 2020. A private equity firm called KPS Capital Partners bought up nearly all of it that September for around $550 million. So yes, the parent company behind this machine is exactly the kind of ownership I just told you to watch out for. Here's why it still makes the list anyway. The engineering hasn't been gutted the way you'd expect from a fund-owned operation. The ZT3400 transaxle is still the real serviceable unit. The suspension is still real. The fabricated deck is still real. Sometimes the best machine on the lot comes from a company you'd rather not be writing a check to. And the honest answer is, you buy the engineering, not the org chart. I'm not going to pretend that's not a little bit of a stomach punch. It is. But a mechanic's job isn't to make you feel good about a purchase. It's to tell you what's actually going to last. Now let's talk about the Scag Liberty Z. This one's the workhorse pick, the one that doesn't need a suspension system or a fancy control layout to earn its keep. It just needs to run every single day and not quit on you. 36 to 61 inch decks, Kawasaki FR series, or Kohler 7000 series engines depending on the size. And here's where you need to actually pay attention, because the transaxle changes depending on which deck you buy. The 48 and 52 inch models run Tough Torque TZ450 units. The bigger decks step up to Hydrogear ZT2800 or ZT3100, the serviceable commercial grade stuff. So if you're shopping one of these, ask the dealer straight out which transaxle is under the deck you're looking at. Don't let anybody wave you off with a vague answer. Scag builds this thing under a company called Metalcraft of Mayville out of Wisconsin, and it's still independent, still run by the same ownership that's had it since 1986. The deck is a fabricated dual plate design, welded, not stamped out of a sheet in a press. You'll see a 5-year warranty on some of these from dealers, and again, that number only happens when a company trusts what they built. This isn't the mower that's going to impress anybody with a suspension system or a touchscreen. It's the mower a commercial crew buys, because it starts every single morning and doesn't leave them stranded halfway through a route. That's a different kind of trust than the Ferris earns, and it's just as real. If you've got a smaller yard and you're looking at the 36 or 48 inch Liberty Z, get the dealer to tell you flat out whether you're getting the Tough Torque TZ450 or the Hydrogear unit, because that answer changes what kind of maintenance conversation you're going to be having 5 years from now. No surprises, no shortcuts hidden behind a spec sheet, just a steady, independent company building a machine that shows up to work every day, whether you're mowing your own 3 acres or running it 5 days a week on somebody else's payroll. Now here's the one I'd tell you flat out to walk past. The Cub Cadet XT1, sitting there on the showroom floor for $2,399 for the 42 inch, climbing up toward $3,000 for the 50 inch. Underneath the hood, a sealed Tough Torque K 46 transaxle. On some of the newer builds, it's a similar sealed TL200 unit. Either way, same idea. No drain plug worth using, no filter to change. It's not bad engineering. It's a business decision. And the business decision was that a transaxle this cheap doesn't need to survive past the warranty, because by the time it dies, you're already back at the dealer buying the next one. Grass packs into the cooling fins. The fan can't move air anymore. The oil cooks itself, and on hills it can vent right out of the case. Tough Torque's own guidance says flat out this transaxle was never meant for hilly property. You'll get maybe 1,000 hours out of one if you baby it and keep it clean. A commercial hydro gear unit is built to laugh at that number. I'll give the K46 this much credit because I promised you accuracy over anger. Tough Torque does sell a seal and axle rebuild kit for it, runs around $300, and a patient guy with a Saturday free can get one running again. That's not nothing. But compare that to a commercial unit where changing the oil is a routine part of ownership instead of an emergency surgery, and you'll understand why I don't put my own money on the sealed side of that fence. Cub Cadet is built by MTD, and MTD is owned by Stanley Black & Decker, the same company that bought Craftsman off Sears back in 2017. Same corporate parent, different paint jobs, and a stamped deck that costs less to press than it costs to actually engineer one that lasts. 13-gauge stamped steel on that 42-inch deck versus the 10-gauge fabricated steel you're getting on machines like the Gravely or the Scag. And one thing worth clearing up, that big Kawasaki engine recall back in 2024 was on the engine maker, not on the mower brands people online tried to pin it on. Get your facts straight before you go blaming the wrong name. So there it is. The Gravely gets you a serviceable transaxle and a family that's never answered to private equity. The Ferris gets you the strongest engineering on this list, even with a fund sitting in the ownership chain. The Scag gets you a steady workhorse that shows up every morning. And the Cub Cadet gets you a sealed transaxle with an expiration date built right into the price tag. None of this means your current mower is junk. If you kept oil in it, the design let you down, not you. Clean your transaxle housing this weekend. Cheapest insurance you'll ever buy.